Listen to the rhythm of a Tuesday morning. The alarm hits at 6. Not a gentle chime, but a digital strike to the central nervous system. Adrenaline floods the bloodstream before the eyes even open. You drag yourself into a $70,000 metallic box, surrounded by stitched leather, panoramic sunroofs, and high-definition digital displays. The windshield wipers drag across the glass, pushing away the rain while you stare at a red stoplight in gridlocked traffic. And then a tiny amber icon flickers on the dashboard. Check engine. For a fraction of a second, your chest tightens, your breathing goes shallow. The pupils dilate. This is the exact same biological response your ancestors had when they heard a predator snapping a twig in the dark. But there is no tiger in the car. There is only a mechanic's bill you can't afford. You make $120,000 a year, yet a simple dashboard light feels like a physical threat to your survival. Why? Because you are broke, not poor. Poor is a lack of basic resources. You're premium broke. You're fully optimized to generate massive amounts of cash, and completely engineered by society to bleed every single penny out before the month ends. You're caught in the most sophisticated psychological snare ever designed by human intelligence. A financial labyrinth built so perfectly that the prisoners actually brag about the quality of the bars. You lease that luxury vehicle to signal dominance on the asphalt, to prove to strangers at stoplights that you're a winner. But that monthly payment ensures your absolute submission in the corporate cubicle. You don't own those heated leather seats. The bank owns them, and by extension, the bank owns your Tuesday mornings, your stress levels, and your blood pressure. This is the baseline biological state of the modern worker. A chronic, low-grade panic disguised as ambition. Society fed you a lie. They told you that crossing the 6-figure salary mark would bring peace. They lied to your face. Making 6 figures just gave you access to premium debt. You simply upgraded the size of the wheel. You're still sprinting until your lungs burn, desperate to stay in the exact same place. Your checking account is a leaky bucket of microtransactions. $15 a month for a streaming service you don't watch. $30 for a food delivery app because you're too emotionally drained to boil a pot of pasta. $100 a month for a gym membership you use twice a year. It's death by 1,000 cuts. You're bleeding out in broad daylight, and the wound is disguised as convenience. Here is the truth they bury in the fine print of every loan agreement you blindly sign. Money isn't just paper or numbers on a screen. Money is stored biological energy. When you exhaust your mind and body dealing with a boss who views you as a disposable spreadsheet metric, you're burning your finite life force. And what do you do with that exhausted, hollowed-out state on a Friday night? You seek a synthetic anesthetic, a $200 steak dinner, a new smartwatch you swipe on Apple Pay, a weekend getaway booked on a piece of plastic charging 24% interest. You call it a well-deserved reward. It isn't a reward. It's cheap dopamine designed to numb the psychological agony of having zero leverage over your own existence. You buy things to cope with the stress of the job that pays for the things. It's a closed-loop circuit of misery. The marketing agencies know exactly how this works. They know your brain is fried by Thursday afternoon. They know your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logical long-term planning, is completely depleted from making decisions for a corporation that would replace you by Monday if you died on Sunday. So they dangle the bait. And you bite. Every single time. But something strange happens when you stop biting. Something the modern consumer economy actively tries to prevent you from ever experiencing. There is a specific mathematical threshold where the biology of fear begins to break down. A numerical tipping point where the grip of the matrix starts to slip from your neck and the fog of financial panic finally lifts. Most people think wealth accumulation is a smooth, linear progression. You save a little, you feel a little better. That's a myth sold by financial advisors who want your management fees. The psychological relief of capital doesn't scale evenly. Having $10,000 in an emergency fund just makes you terrified of a medical bill wiping out your $10,000. Having $30,000 means you can comfortably replace a leaking roof, but your stomach still drops when the corporate restructuring rumors start spreading through the office Slack channels. The mutation doesn't happen gradually. It happens aggressively. And it almost always crystallizes right around the $100,000 mark in liquid net worth. Reaching 100 grand isn't just a financial milestone. It's a violent biological rewrite of your nervous system. The daily drip of cortisol shuts off. The instinct to fight or flee disappears, replaced by a cold, calculating stillness. The moment that specific amount of capital sits silently in an investment account, actively compounding and working for you, your brain undergoes a permanent, irreversible change. But the entire consumer machine relies on your panic to function. If you stop panicking, the machine breaks, and the invisible forces that architected your debt will do absolutely everything in their power to make sure you never cross that line. Look at the architecture of the modern corporate environment. The open floor plans, the neon signs promoting hustle culture, the constant ping of Slack messages demanding immediate attention. It is designed to look like a playground for ambitious professionals, but functionally, it's a high-tech panopticon. The system is engineered to keep your baseline anxiety just high enough to ensure absolute compliance, but low enough that you don't experience a total psychological breakdown in the middle of a Tuesday staff meeting. They need you functional, but they desperately need you vulnerable. They need you carrying just enough debt to keep you docile, because a man with no options is a man who will say yes to absolutely anything. Phase 2. Anatomy of the corporate hostage. When you have zero liquidity, your boss isn't just your manager. He is your God. He dictates where you live, what your children eat, and whether or not you can afford health insurance. In the modern economy, your survival is explicitly tied to your W-2. Let's destroy a popular myth right now. The smiling HR manager talking about company culture and being a family is just psychological camouflage. HR doesn't exist to protect you from the company. HR exists to protect the company from you. And the most dangerous thing you can possibly be to a corporate structure is financially independent. An employee with $100,000 in liquid cash doesn't laugh at the regional manager's terrible jokes. An employee with real savings won't answer passive-aggressive emails at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Capital is defiance. But you don't have capital. You have a massive mortgage, a leased luxury vehicle, and thousands of dollars in credit card debt. Loyalty in the corporate world is just a polite, sterilized word for financial desperation. The only reason you show up to that morning video call with a fake smile is because the banking system demands their pound of flesh by the first of the month. You think you are climbing the ladder. But the modern corporate ladder isn't a ladder at all. It's just a steeper, more exhausting section of the maze. They paint the walls white, offer free organic coffee in the break room, and suddenly the lab rats forget they're running inside a wheel. You aren't climbing. You're just spinning faster. You get a 15% raise, and what happens? You don't save it. Society has meticulously trained you to view that extra income as permission to upgrade your cage. You trade in a perfectly reliable car for a sedan you lease at $800 a month. You move from an apartment to a 4-bedroom house with a mortgage that swallows half your net pay. You call it leveling up. But mathematically, you just tied a heavier anchor to your own neck and jumped into deeper water. The middle class doesn't buy assets. They buy the physical manifestation of their own insecurities, financed at 12% interest. And this is exactly how the invisible trap sinks its teeth deep into your biology. By Thursday afternoon, your prefrontal cortex is completely fried. You've spent 40 hours making decisions you don't care about, solving problems for a corporation that would post your job opening before your obituary even hits the local paper. The stress is overwhelming, so you seek out a synthetic anesthetic. The system engineered the stress, and conveniently, it also sells the cure. It's called retail therapy, and it's a biological tax on the exhausted. You drop $150 on a steak dinner on Friday night. You buy a $1,000 smartwatch you don't need. You do this because you are desperately trying to buy back a tiny sliver of the autonomy you sold away on Monday morning. The system extracts your labor from 9 to 5, and then it extracts your wages from 5 to 9. You are effectively acting as a human battery, powering an economy designed to drain you dry and replace you when you burn out. Most people never realize they're playing a rigged game. They think if they just endure a little more abuse, if they just get that next elusive promotion, the pressure will magically stop. But the pressure is structural. It's baked into the math. If you manage to save $30,000, you feel a false sense of security. But 30 grand isn't freedom. It's just a temporary buffer against a single catastrophic event. One medical emergency, one transmission failure, one round of corporate layoffs, and your buffer is entirely wiped out. You are instantly reset to zero, back to the bottom of the hill. This perpetual cycle keeps your brain marinating in a toxic bath of cortisol. You're constantly braced for impact. You sleep, but you never actually rest. You take vacations, but you spend the entire week checking your phone because the fear of being replaced is etched into your nervous system. The architects of this debt machine rely on your exhaustion. But the system has a fatal flaw, a mathematical blind spot they pray you never discover. There is a precise threshold where gravity stops pulling you down, and the momentum violently shifts in your favor. Let's talk about the math of gravity. When a rocket leaves the atmosphere, the vast majority of its fuel is burned in the first few miles just fighting the Earth's gravitational pull. Once it reaches orbit, the resistance vanishes. It glides. Wealth accumulation operates on the exact same physical principle. The financial gravity of the middle class is designed to be mathematically crushing. Every single system, inflation, taxes, interest rates, and planned obsolescence, is pulling you back down to zero. This brings us to the most dangerous illusion sold to the American worker, the liquidity versus equity trap. You know the guy. He lives in a $500,000 house in a manicured suburb. He drives a $70,000 truck. If you ask a bank, his net worth looks fantastic, but his money is trapped in drywall, roofing, and a depreciating internal combustion engine. He has exactly $4,000 in his checking account. If his HVAC system dies in the middle of July, he has to put the repair on a credit card charging 28% interest. He is a paper millionaire, but in reality, he is a biological hostage to a broken air conditioner. He is trapped in a beautiful, heavily financed mousetrap, totally paralyzed by his own illiquidity. Now take a different individual. A man with $100,000 sitting entirely in liquid invested assets, index funds, treasuries, cold, accessible capital. The bank might not offer him the premium VIP lounge, but this man possesses something the paper millionaire does not. He has bought his own nervous system back from the market. Phase 3. Gravitational escape velocity. The first $100,000 is a bloodbath. It is a psychological war of attrition. You are pushing a boulder up a vertical cliff, using nothing but the brute force of your own labor. You have to say no to the vacations, ignore the new car smell, and completely detach from the expectations of your peers. Your money earns pennies while your labor generates the bulk of the growth. It feels incredibly slow. It feels unfair. And this is exactly where 95% of the population surrenders. They get to 30 grand, get exhausted, and buy a boat. But if you survive the climb, the mathematics shift violently in your favor. When you hit $100,000 in invested capital, a shadow worker clocks in for you. Historically, markets double your money roughly every 7 to 10 years. A 10% annual return on 100 grand means your money just generated $10,000 in a single year. Your capital is now earning more than what millions of people make working part-time jobs. And it didn't take a single sick day. It didn't complain. It didn't ask for a coffee break. Society desperately wants you to lock your capital in physical objects because liquid cash is a weapon of non-compliance. Equity in a primary residence isn't wealth. It's a psychological pacifier. The banking sector feeds you so you don't realize you're just a tenant paying property taxes. A worker with liquid cash is a worker who can pause, analyze, and refuse. So they convince you that renting is throwing money away, pushing you into a 30-year mortgage that chains you to a specific zip code and a specific regional manager. They weaponize your own desire for shelter, turning it into the heaviest anchor you will ever carry. When your passive returns start covering your baseline survival expenses, your groceries, your utilities, your car insurance, the biological necessity to panic completely evaporates. You stop looking at your salary as a lifeline and start looking at it as a tool for financial expansion. You no longer need the boss's approval to feed your family. You only need it to speed up your investment timeline. This realization shatters the illusion. You look around the office and suddenly see the invisible strings attached to everyone's limbs. You see the middle manager sacrificing his marriage to get a bonus that will entirely go toward paying off a swimming pool he never has time to use. You see the tragedy of human energy being converted into corporate revenue, only to be immediately recycled into consumer debt as the pack keeps running the wheel until their hearts give out. The fog clears. But this mathematical awakening introduces a new, dangerous psychological phase. Because once you see the bars of the cage, you can never go back to sleep. You have to learn how to operate inside the machine without letting the machine know you are awake. Phase 4. The compound disconnect. The moment the math flips, your relationship with the world fractures permanently. Your friends are still arguing over credit card rewards and the latest iPhone models, and you find yourself sitting in silence. You realize that most of modern socializing is just exhausted people exchanging complaints about cages they voluntarily financed. You are crossing the threshold. But if you start preaching this mathematical reality to your co-workers, they won't thank you, they will resent you. People who are drowning absolutely hate the guy who quietly built a raft. So you have to make a choice. You can either flaunt your new leverage, buy a luxury watch, and paint a target on your back, or you can embrace the darkest, most powerful strategy of wealth accumulation ever devised. A strategy that requires absolute silence. Most people who suddenly acquire a mathematical advantage ruin it immediately. They cross the $100,000 threshold, and their fragile ego takes the wheel. They want to prove to their broke friends that they are no longer broke. They upgrade the vehicle, they buy the oversized watch, they start picking up the tab at expensive steakhouses to simulate dominance. And just like that, they fall right back into the psychological trap they just spent half a decade bleeding to escape. The Matrix doesn't care if you temporarily slipped out of the handcuffs. It leaves the door wide open for your own vanity to drag you right back inside. But the true escape artist doesn't seek validation from a sick society. He seeks absolute invulnerability. This is where your biological mutation becomes fully operational. You stop viewing money as a tool to purchase objects, and you start viewing it as a heavy shield to deflect the world's demands. You embrace the absolute ultimate luxury of modern existence, total social irrelevance. Let the guys in the office fight over the corner cubicle. Let them finance $80,000 trucks to impress women who don't even like them. You are playing a completely different game now. You are cultivating the most dangerous superpower a middle-class worker can possess. Phase 5. Weaponized silence. Stealth wealth is not just a financial strategy. It is a psychological fortress. When you have $100,000 compounding quietly in the background, you don't need to bark. You don't need to flex. Your nervous system is finally resting at a peaceful baseline. You walk into the exact same fluorescent-lit office, wearing the same unremarkable clothes, but your internal architecture is now made of titanium. Here is a decree you must burn into your brain. Any dollar spent to manufacture envy in others is a dollar stolen from your own psychological peace. You cannot buy freedom while simultaneously funding a public relations campaign for a life you don't actually own. The need to show off is directly correlated to internal panic. The man screaming about his success on social media is drowning in negative equity. The guy who truly possesses leverage is the quietest guy in the room. He is the ghost at the barbecue. He smiles when the middle manager threatens to cut quarterly bonuses because he knows his dividend yield just paid for his entire month of groceries. He doesn't argue. He doesn't complain. He just nods, goes back to his desk, and continues quietly buying his own freedom, one share at a time. Think about the physical contrast. In the beginning, you were the guy sweating in gridlock traffic, having a near-death experience over a simple check engine light. Now picture a completely different Tuesday morning. You are sitting on a cheap park bench with a $2 black coffee. You are watching a guy in a leased Porsche aggressively tailgate a minivan because he is exactly 4 minutes late for a meeting with a vice president who hates his guts. You look at the shiny Porsche, and you don't feel a single ounce of envy. You feel pity. You know the exact mathematical prison that man is trapped inside. You could write a check for his car today, but you choose the park bench, the cheap coffee, and the quiet mind. That is the biological shift. That is what liquid capital actually buys. It buys the right to step off the battlefield entirely. You are no longer a participant in the rat race. You are an observer, a tourist in a high-stress zoo. The corporate machine relies on predictability. They know exactly how to handle the angry employee. They know how to manipulate the overly ambitious hustler, but they have absolutely no idea what to do with a man who simply doesn't care if he gets fired today or tomorrow. Your lack of fear becomes an invisible armor. But to maintain this untouchable status, you have to execute the final maneuver. You must disappear completely into the background. Bust 6. The Ghost Protocol. Never tell your coworkers about your portfolio. Never tell your family about your liquidity. Let them think you are slightly boring. Let them assume you are just getting by like everyone else. The moment you reveal your leverage, you become a target for everyone else's poor decisions and financial emergencies. Stay in the shadows. Keep feeding the silent machine that buys your time back. If you are still fiercely defending your right to finance depreciating metal, keep scrolling. The cage was built perfectly for you. Enjoy the wheel. But if you see the bars and you are quietly stacking the capital to cut through them, leave a comment below saying, "Liquid Ghost." Everyone else will just think it's a glitch. We will know you are awake. My name is Daniel Rath, and I will see you outside the maze.